You feel it, even if you can't name it. The gap is widening, the rules feel rigged, and yet the system keeps standing like nothing ever broke. That's not a mystery, it's a design feature. Most people search for simple answers because simple answers are comforting. They blame bad luck. They blame individual laziness. They scroll until they forget the feeling. But the truth is uglier and more useful. Modern capitalism is not only an economic system, it is an art of managing contradictions inside human minds and inside societies. It survives because it doesn't merely extract resources, it regulates attention, redirects anger, and converts social conflict into something harmless. So today, I'm going to show you how that mechanism works, not in theory, but in the psychological steps it uses on real people like you. I'm going to talk about how power turns potential revolts into career ladders, how entertainment replaces justice, how financial markets turn ordinary hope into staged losses, and why the most dangerous trick is not the obvious manipulation. The most dangerous trick is the one that makes the victim blame himself. If you've ever thought, I work hard, why don't I get ahead? If you've ever watched someone rise while you felt stuck, and you couldn't tell whether you were angry at them or angry at yourself, you're already inside the system's logic. Let's pull it apart. In the story, the system tells you, inequality is an unfortunate side effect, like bad weather, like a temporary storm that will pass if the rest of society does the right things. But the mechanism doesn't rely on storms, it relies on steering. Picture a simple world with 10 people. One day, one of them stumbles onto a gold mine by accident. In any moral universe, that single event would create an immediate rupture. The others would see a clear fact: one person owns an asset because of chance, while the rest must continue working without the same leverage. The anger would be rational, the resentment would be collective, the injustice would be undeniable. Now here's what would happen if there were no intelligence behind the power structure. The nine would unite. The person with the gold would become a target. The relationship between labor and ownership would become a direct battlefield. But real systems don't let that happen. Power's first job is not to defend wealth with force. Power's first job is to prevent the formation of a unified enemy. So the system builds a ladder, not for everyone, just for enough people. The gold owner doesn't just keep the mine. He creates a new layer in the labor structure. He selects one or a few workers and offers them a promotion, more money, a nicer title, access, status, maybe a small apartment upgrade, maybe a car, maybe lead responsibilities. The exact details don't matter. The psychological effect matters. One person gets $1 million a year, or whatever number your culture worships. Immediately, that person feels hope. Hope is not just a feeling. Hope is a behavioral engine. It turns frustration into loyalty. It transforms "this is unfair" into "if I stay obedient and prove myself, I can reach that level too." The gold owner doesn't need the promoted person to produce extra value. He needs them to manage other people's minds. Their job becomes emotional. They become a living buffer between the oppressed and the source of oppression. And this is where the contradiction gets transformed. The original conflict was between owners and workers, between mine and labor. But the system reroutes the conflict sideways. The nine no longer focus solely on the gold owner. Some of them start resentments toward the promoted colleague. Others blame themselves. Maybe they didn't work hard enough. Maybe they lacked talent. Maybe they made the wrong choices. Some become obsessed with self-improvement as if the ladder is real and the gate is open. Notice what the system achieved. The injustice did not disappear. The feeling of unfairness didn't vanish like magic. It got diffused. It became messy. It split into smaller emotions that can't organize into revolt. This is the core philosophy. Inequality is not only maintained by economics, it is maintained by psychological re-engineering. People believe the danger for power is direct competition, like markets or political debates. That's what textbooks teach you because it's clean and comfortable. But power understands something darker. The real threat is solidarity among the oppressed. When people connect their anger to a clear cause and form a collective identity, the system becomes unstable. So the system does not solve conflict. It weaponizes conflict. It cultivates jealousy. It encourages comparison. It rewards internal competition. It creates a culture where everyone is watching everyone else, trying to climb, trying to prove, trying to win approval from the same invisible gatekeepers. A society full of envy is safer than a society full of courage, because envy makes you look down, not up. Envy makes your enemy your colleague. Envy makes you police your own behavior. Envy turns revolution energy into personal stress, into humiliation, into overtime, into aspiration porn. And aspiration porn is not just a meme, it's a training method. You watch someone make it. You imagine your own future. You think the gate is somewhere just ahead if you run faster. But most gates and design systems are not built for everyone. They are built for a few. The rest are built for disappointment. Here's the brutal part. The latter makes you cooperate with your own reduction. It turns exploitation into self-managed obedience. You can see it in modern workplaces, but it's not limited to jobs. It's in education systems, in social status games, in influencer cultures, in communities where ranking is everything and everyone is one failure away from shame. You're encouraged to compete even when the competition is rigged by design. You're told if you want it badly enough, you'll get it. And because you fail, you feel broken instead of furious. That is the psychological pivot the system needs, the shift from external blame to internal self-blame. Now let's go deeper, because keeping conflict divided is only step one. Step two is making sure people never even have enough mental space to connect their lives to the political structure that shapes them. If you want rebellion to fail, you don't only hide money, you hide meaning, and meaning today is controlled through attention. In 1995, in San Francisco, a group of powerful figures across finance, technology, politics, and media met not like scientists, not like ordinary public officials, but like insiders planning a new era of governance. The specific details aren't the point, the attitude is. They understood that in a world with increasing inequality, using only police and economics is not enough. You can arrest bodies, you can impose laws, you can maintain order with force. But force has a limit. It creates rage. It creates martyr stories. It makes conflict visible. So they realized something more sophisticated. The battlefield is cognition. The battlefield is attention. The battlefield is psychological. They developed and promoted ideas and strategies that act like sedatives for mass society. The mother's milk concept is a metaphor. People who are fed stop screaming. People who are entertained stop demanding answers. Translate that into modern reality and you get a blunt mechanism. If you can control what people pay attention to, you can control what they think about. If you can control what they think about, you can control what they feel. If you can control what they feel, you can control what they demand. And if you can control what they demand, you can control what changes. Entertainment becomes an anesthetic, not the harmless kind, but the kind engineered to keep people emotionally occupied and politically asleep. The system doesn't need to censor you like old dictators did. Censorship creates drama. Censorship makes truth urgent. Instead, the system floods the world with choices. It gives you a million ways to express yourself, but each expression is inside a channel that leads nowhere. It lets you talk, just not about the right things. It lets you argue, just not about the system itself. It gives you infinite noise so the one clear signal never gets heard. This is attention management, not censorship. Now let me show you how this works on the brain. Your mind is built for scanning. It's built for quick decisions in a world where survival depended on fast perception. When you constantly receive rapid stimuli, your higher order thinking gets interrupted again and again. You stop practicing deep analysis because deep analysis takes time and patience, and your environment punishes patience. Short videos exploit that weakness. Bright colors, sudden sound, tiny arcs, endless refresh. Your brain learns to expect rewards in microdoses. Books require sustained attention. Debates require waiting. Reading requires tolerance for slow understanding. None of that pairs well with a world trained on immediate stimulation. So what happens? Your capacity to question declines. Your memory and reflection shrink. Your anger stays, but it's wrapped into trivia. You don't organize it into policy demands. You digest it into commentary. And then society doesn't become a crowd planning resistance. It becomes an audience consuming content. That's the most haunting transformation. Citizens become spectators, not because they suddenly become stupid, because they become exhausted, because they become fragmented, because their minds never gather enough energy to form a shared interpretation of reality. Instead of asking why unemployment is structural, millions argue about celebrities. Instead of asking why wages don't match productivity, millions debate romantic rumors. Instead of asking why healthcare or housing is designed to exclude them, millions drown in game mechanics and fictional conflicts. And the system behind the curtain benefits because it doesn't have to silence you. It only has to distract you. Distraction is the easiest control mechanism in history because it feels like freedom. Nobody grabs your throat. You grab your own phone. You sign up for your own sedation. By the time you notice the pattern, you're already training yourself to accept it as normal. Now, a sedated society is not just peaceful, it is controllable, because once you remove the mental space for political imagination, you remove the possibility of collective action. People can still complain, but they complain like consumers. They complain like commentators. They complain like individuals in comment sections where nothing is ever coordinated into change. So the question becomes, if conflict stays invisible, how does power continue to move money and resources upward? It uses financial markets, and it uses them like a machine for extracting wealth through staged expectation. Let's talk about the art of transforming contradictions, but in money form. There is a famous myth-like story often told about a powerful oil magnate who, during a stock market frenzy, pretended to take advice while quietly selling his positions before a crash. A child selling shoes allegedly tries to convince him to buy a sure thing. He taps the boy on the shoulder, smiles, and orders his people to sell everything. Then the crash comes, wiping out the masses. You can treat the story as folklore. The details may be exaggerated, but the logic is real. When everyone gets involved, the system is usually already moving toward collapse. Power doesn't need you to understand the future. It needs you to participate in believing it. The bubble is not just speculation, it's a social ritual. People gather around hope and call it logic. Here is the pattern that repeats through crisis cycles. Buy cheap when nobody cares. Push prices upward when expectations become contagious. Then sell high when belief reaches its peak. Who controls the timing? Those with capital, those with information networks, those with the ability to influence narratives through media, those who can absorb losses because they are not playing to survive. They're playing to redistribute. The ordinary investor is not simply lacking skill. The ordinary investor is lacking leverage and lacking control over the information environment. And yet the system sells the idea that the market is fair. It sells the idea that you're rational if you invest wisely. It calls it the free market, the invisible hand, the genius of capitalism. But think about the lived experience. When crises hit, who loses first? Often the poor, often the working class. Often people who bet their future because the system made them believe it was possible to escape their situation through financial participation. And then, after the collapse, who buys what's left at discount? Those with money and those who can afford patience. So the crisis becomes a transfer mechanism. A family loses their home, a worker loses their job, a small business collapses. And while that happens, the powerful either exit early or they liquidate strategically or they buy in panic. They treat catastrophe like supply. This isn't a one-time accident, it's a recurring feature because the system has a built-in incentive to concentrate ownership. Crashes are opportunities not only for survival, but for consolidation. The system is designed so that chaos produces winners. And the winners write the narrative after the fact. They tell you that it was everyone's risk. They tell you it was your fault for not being smarter. They tell you it was bad luck. They tell you next time will be different. That last sentence is the psychological trap, because the trap doesn't just take your money, it takes your identity. It turns your loss into shame. It turns your shame into self-blame. And self-blame keeps you isolated. If you think you are the problem, you don't unite with people who share your experience. You don't seek structural change. You don't form a coalition. You try to fix yourself inside the same system that damaged you. That is how a system survives without constantly using brute force. Now, let's connect this money mechanism to the attention mechanism and the ladder mechanism. They are not separate tricks, they are one strategy executed in different domains. Ladders create internal competition, entertainment creates mental sedation, financial bubbles convert hope into loss while shifting blame to individuals. Together, they produce a society where people keep participating in their own containment. And this is why the capitalism you see is not just wealth creation, it is also belief production. Power doesn't just own resources, it owns interpretation. It owns the story of how reality works. So when inequality grows, people don't reach for the system. They reach for the comfort of personal explanations. They start searching for self-improvement courses, productivity hacks, motivational content, wellness routines, wealth mindset slogans. They treat structural exploitation like it's a personal software bug. Let me say this plainly because it's uncomfortable. If your life collapses repeatedly under conditions you didn't design, calling it mindset is often a way of avoiding the truth. It's a spiritual disguise for resignation. Yes, you should build skills, but skills are not a substitute for justice. When power uses psychology to make you think your only option is to win within their rules, then even your self-help becomes part of the control system. That's how contradictions get transformed. The oppressed learn to compete, not to rebel. The distracted learn to consume, not to organize. The losers learn to self-blame, not to question the rules. And all of this culminates in the most dangerous illusion, the illusion that the game is fair enough for your individual effort to guarantee a different outcome. The system encourages dreamers because dreamers keep moving, dreamers keep working, dreamers keep hoping, dreamers keep forgiving. It does not need to stop you from dreaming. It needs you to dream in the correct direction. So you dream about status, you dream about wealth, you dream about being chosen, you dream about being the exception. And while you're dreaming, you internalize the logic of selection. Then one day you notice you're tired. You notice your life is shaped by someone else's schedule. You notice your choices are pre-filtered by market incentives. You notice you spend more time preparing to impress than preparing to live. And still the system whispers, keep playing, you're close. You just need one more push. That push becomes a leash. So here is the core question you need to face, and I'm not going to soften it. Do you want to keep being an audience member in the play they wrote, or do you want to stop accepting the rules as inevitable? Because it is one thing to recognize injustice. It is another thing to become dangerous to the system. The system is not afraid of your feelings.